Luthra also joins us with leaders from industry body FICCI on their budget verdict.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has delivered the interim budget. No big bang announcements as were being predicted, as were being spoken about. The government has stuck to the path of fiscal consolidation and good macroeconomics. Joining us right now is Shubhrakant Panda, former president of FICCI and managing director of Indian Metals and Ferro Alloys. Anant Goenka, vice president, vice chairman of the RPG Group. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Shubhrakant, if I can begin with you, how do you see the budget? A lot was being discussed about PM Kisan, about Capex growth to the tune of maybe 30%. Are you disappointed, or are you feel that it's good that the government has stuck to the rule book as far as the interim budget goes?
So, I think it's a very clear articulation of intent on the part of the government, with the finance minister highlighting the accomplishments over the past decade or so, as well as charting out, the trajectory for the, going ahead. And in that context, the clear articulation of the the areas of focus, which is the poor, the women, the youth, and the farmers, means to build on their capability and empower them to contribute to Viksit Bharat. I think all of that was laid out very, very clearly. And in that context, I think taking forward the Viksit Bharat journey further, the focus now is on getting the states on board. And to that extent, the 75,000 crore outlay for milestone-linked reforms, I think is a good measure. But specifically on the Capex question that you asked, I don't think it is something that we should be disappointed, because keep in mind that last year was a significant 33% hike to 10 lakh crores, and a further 11.1% hike on that record number is not something to be scoffed at. I think the government has done a very good job of doing the heavy lifting and providing support to the economy when it was needed the most. And now the finance minister has acknowledged in her speech that private sector capex is starting to pick up, and buoyed by tax receipts, etc. What they're looking to do is cut back on the borrowing so as to give headroom to the private sector to fund its own expansion plans, etc. So, I think the public and the private capex working in tandem is what will take us forward. But most importantly, I think from an industry perspective, and indeed on the larger perspective of the economy, is the commitment to fiscal prudence. So containing fiscal deficit at 5.8% for the current year, and bringing it down sharply to 5.1% forecast for FY25, I think is something which is absolutely commendable.
Right. Let me go across to Anant Goenka, Vice President of FICCI at this point. Anant, what do you feel about this path that the government has taken, especially the commitments, the targets around fiscal deficit of 5.8% for FY24, 5.1% for FY25. So do you feel that this is a government which does not want to fall for populism, which wants to stick to the path of fiscal consolidation, good economics? And as far as the RPG Group goes, are there certain announcements in the budget which make you excited, make you more confident?
Right. I think this reflects a lot of focus on continuity by the government, the fact that they're continuing the journey on fiscal prudence, especially in an election year. So to me, it's a very positive sign that they're continuing to stick to improving on fiscal prudence, and better than what was expected. So that's very positive. With respect to the RPG Group, I'd say the positive has been the continued investment in infrastructure, highways, which bodes well for our company, KEC International. In addition to that, I'd say the infrastructure spends are very well divided across the board, whether it is roads, ports, railways, all areas of infrastructure are being looked at. And I think that will have a positive impact as a multiplier on the economy, as well as infrastructure companies across the board.
Right. Let me go back to Shubhrakant at this point. Shubhrakant, just yesterday we had seen a reduction in duties on certain components. This was with regard to the mobile phone division. Now, when it comes to adjustment of duties, reduction of customs duties for the sake of Atmanirbhar Bharat, we didn't hear of too many announcements, but the push towards green energy, the push towards solar and renewable schemes, how do you see all of that?
So, the finance minister articulated in her speech that in keeping with the tradition of vote on account, there are no direct or indirect tax proposals contained in the interim budget. But I guess from what was announced yesterday for the mobile phone sector, etc., is something that was needed for a very, very important sector, one which has grown rapidly. So that's where that stands. But clearly, coming to the question you're asking about green growth, I think all of us agree on one thing, that what we need is not just growth, but sustainable and inclusive growth. And the interim budget had clear directionality on both, carrying forward the good work of the government of previous budgets. So when it comes to sustainable growth, the viability gap funding for up to 1 gigawatt of offshore wind, the emphasis on EV ecosystem, including charging infrastructure, public e-buses for public transportation, and not to mention the rooftop solar scheme for households, which will benefit 1 crore households, if I'm not mistaken. I think these are all very, very significant measures which shows India's commitment to the energy transition initiative. And this is something, keep in mind, that has the emphasis and the push from the very top, with the Honorable Prime Minister, making it a hallmark of his government, and talking about initiatives like LIFE, which is lifestyle for the environment. So there is plenty of steps in there in terms of directionality, in terms of vision for sustainable growth, and from an inclusivity perspective as well. Looking out for those at the bottom of the pyramid, and that is something that I think all of us support. That where help is needed, it must be provided. So and not just right. In that manner, but also creating opportunities through the R&D fund, etc. I think sustainability and inclusivity are the hallmark of not just this interim budget, but sustained action over the past several years.
Right. Anant Goenka, does this budget in a way give you confidence about Capex deployment, about the private investment cycle?
No, absolutely. I think, as Shubhrakant mentioned, this is already on a high base of 33% increase that we saw last year. We are seeing a further 11% increase. Implementation of projects has been excellent. If you look at the number of kilometers of roads that are being laid, is the highest ever that we have seen in the country under Minister Gadkari. So to that extent, not only are projects or investments being announced, but they're actually being implemented at a great pace. They have been very targeted investments also that have been announced. Corridors for certain elements such as cement and minerals that were announced on the railway side, port connectivity, decongestion of high traffic zones. So each of them are very focused and will result in high ROI as that investment as well. So to that extent, it will bode very well for business. It will bode well for the auto industry, for the infrastructure segment, as well as decongesting the entire logistics space, where India has some area to cover. Logistic cost as a percentage of GDP is around 14%, and through Gati Shakti, the government is looking at single digits. So all of this will help in various sectors across the board.
Thank you so much for joining us, giving us your views on the interim budget, and how do you see this encouraging the private sector to invest more in the coming months. Thank you once again for being with us, and that's a wrap of this broadcast for the moment, but our live coverage of Budget 2024 continues on CNBC TV18. Keep tuning in through the day.
Well, it continues indeed, Parikshit, but we have to take a short break. Don't go anywhere. We're back with our budget special coverage on the other side. Welcome back to our budget special coverage, and my colleague Parikshit Luthra also spoke to Anish Shah of M&M on the budget, what he made of it, how it could impact his business and the economy. Listen into that conversation.
This is actually an excellent budget. It's very thoughtful. It's not easy to meet all the constituents' needs, but I feel that this does it well, because first, let's start with the long-term vision, which is really around Viksit Bharat and positioning India in the world as a growing power. And there are a number of elements of the budget that enable that. In terms of the logistics focus that we have, in terms of the states that are brought in and the incentives given to be able to make business easier. And these are actions that will really position India very well in the long term. In addition to that, it's an inclusive budget because there's a lot of emphasis on social empowerment, on homes, and a number of other areas that address the four constituents that you mentioned. And beyond that, it's also one that showcases and takes further India's leadership on the climate front. And a number of initiatives that have been outlined in the budget that will be climate friendly. So on balance, I would say that this is one that is very positive for the country overall for the long term, and for the industry and for various different constituents in the country.
Right. Let me speak about the climate action and the opportunity there. The rooftop solarization scheme, which would cover 1 crore households, and they will be able to obtain up to 300 units of free electricity. The government believes this will lead to savings of 15,000 to 18,000 annually. Then you have the green growth schemes, where you have spoken about coal gasification, viability gap funding for offshore wind energy for about 1 gigawatt. You've also spoken about phased mandatory blending of compressed biogas in CNG. How do you see these measures, and how do you think the industry will pick up cues from this?
So the world is concerned about energy transition, and there are multiple discussions around that. I think India is showing the way. India is showing leadership in energy transition in terms of how it can happen. It started with utility scale solar plants, and now hybrid, which is solar, wind and storage that have come in as well. And with rooftop solar now and other incentives around it, this is one that will transform the way India uses energy. And first, it's cheaper, and therefore it's beneficial for users, whether they're industries or individuals. And second, it's cleaner, and that will enable, again, a better environment, which is something that we all look forward to. But beyond that, for the long run, it really helps in that fight against climate change. So I think it covers a number of areas. Today we see utility scale solar plants being much cheaper than fossil fuel based plants, and that's something that is not only at the utility level, but even as we put in smaller captive plants for specific uses, and as we extend that to rooftop solar, that's exactly the same principle. The technology is there, it is better overall, and this budget is enabling it. So industry should welcome it and actually drive a much faster conversion to renewables for everyone.
Right. I would just like to quote Anand Mahindra as well. He tweeted some time back, "For many years I have been saying that we create too much drama around the budget and raise expectations of policy announcements to an unrealistically feverish pitch." What do you think India has done by giving a budget which covers all the major segments of the population, of the industry? No big bang announcements, as this is a vote on account, but at the same time also indicates that we don't want to go in for open populism. We want to maintain fiscal discipline. How do you see the messaging in this budget?
For this, I would look at the past few budgets, not only this one. And we've seen economics really play center stage as compared to politics. And that is always better for the economy. As you rightly said, there are no big bang announcements, there are no populist measures. At the same time, it's about inclusive growth, and there are segments of society that are not left behind. And therefore, I think this balances everything really well.
Right. And finally, there was no announcement on the FAME scheme, but yes, the FM indicated that the support for electric mobility would continue. A payment security mechanism for electric buses will also be brought in. How do you see that? Are you hoping for some clarity on the FAME scheme?
I believe there will be clarity in terms of the operating mechanisms. That was not required in the budget itself. But the positive aspect is that that scheme is continuing right now. And the other aspects also around buses as well as around the EV charging infrastructure is a positive step forward, because we will see the country really starting to adopt EVs as we see a slew of EV products start coming in over the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay, so that's as far as the budget is concerned. But in other big news that